Now let's go through the sorting of an object array. Let me bring up the question. The question says, in previous assignment, we implement a bar chart solution for Joe's Pizza, which reads the cells from a file and display the bar chart. The question says, basically, you need to read from a file, parse that. The file, each line contains a day and a series of cells. You need to create a sales object, sales bar chart object for each day and add cells into that sales bar chart object. Now we want to develop a sorting method for an array of store sales bar chart array, which will sort the array descendingly based on sales value. Apply this sorting to sales array so that when bar chart is displayed, the top cells is always on top and the rest bar chart will descending one by one. Now, the question comes, how do you define a sorting of array? Or to be exact, how do you define the sorting of objects? Or to be exact, how do you define the greater than or equal to or less than of objects? So for store sales bar chart, at least there are two ways to compare. One way is to compare the store name, the sales name, for example, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Or you can also define the comparison based on the store sales. Now, apparently we are defining on sales value. The question asks us to do sales value, and the store sales bar chart happens to have a get store sales method, which will provide us with a primitive data type, a double value. And we can use this double value to do a simple comparison using greater than or less than. However, if these things can get more complicated, you can run into requirements like either you need to compare Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, or maybe store name, New York, Boston, Chicago. All these are possible. And we are going to use the easier way this time, just to get the sales value running through a method. But if you need to do other comparison, most likely you will need to define a method inside the object, comparing this one instance to another, and come up with some kind of result. And this is the same for string. When you do compare to, string have this compare to method. And that's exactly why you need to define your own method when you try to do comparison. Okay, so let's create the class. Let's call it selection sort store sales bar chart. And I'm going to copy the store sales bar chart directly. This one, most of it is still applicable. So I will copy everything except for the package part. But of course, there will be an error because I need to rename this to our name, to a new name. So now we have the same selection store sales bar chart. If I run it, it's asking the input. I will put input.txt. I believe this file is still there, which will give us this unsorted value or the value that it was read. Now we need to create a select sorting. So let me copy this actually from the select sort that accepts both ascending and descending. I'm going to copy it. Oops. To this selection sort. Okay, currently I'm not using that, but if I ever want to use it, apparently I need to change the data type. And while I'm doing this array data type change, I also need to change the intermediate values data type. So here, okay, and here, okay. So now comes the part where you do all the comparison. The comparison comes at an issue that these two array objects, these two elements, these two objects of store sales bar chart are not comparable. So we need to get store sales for the two objects. That's how you can make a comparison feasible. Otherwise, how do you compare one object to another? There's no way you can compare unless you define your own method. So these are the implementations that we need to do. But before we implement this, actually I can implement now. So instead of, let me change that, selection sort of bar charts. Remember selection sort prior, this is what we had. This is the output that we have. Now let's sort it. However, they're false. We want to descending so that the highest come first. However, there is an issue. The issue is when you do sorting, remember this store cells is a partially filled array. So when you do sorting, when you try to get source cells, if that element is not filled, you will run into an issue. If that element, let's say element 365 is empty, then we'll try to call the get source cells method for that element 365, you will run into an issue. There are many ways to handle this. The simplest, of course, is to define a new array and copy all the existing elements into this new array. Or you can have some other objects to wrap up this array. But for us, because this is just demo, so I'm just going to change this to 10 as we have 10 elements. Okay, now let's run. I'm still going to use input, input.txt. And you can see that highest comes first, followed by all these. Okay, so this is how you do a sorting. But again, you can see that sorting, selection sort, the basic algorithm is still the same. We just go through each starting position one at a time. And in each pass, we will get the lowest or the highest into the first element. Then we will continue this process again and again until the all array has been until we go through all the array. So this is how you do object sorting. The only thing we add to this object sorting is that you need to define a way to compare objects. Once you define that, either through exposing some measures from the object, or by defining a method inside the object definition on how to compare, this is how you define. Once you define these, then you can do the same sorting for object arrays, just like you can do to primitive data types.